Hi everybody, it's me, Sally Garozzo here. Good to see you all. How are you doing this evening? If you are watching, then do jump on, say hello. I cannot wait to welcome Rachel Collins to this live in a minute. So hopefully some people will join us. When you do jump on, let us know that you are here. I can see one person's watching, but I'm just going to introduce myself just for 1 second. So I'm Sally Garozzo, and I help creative entrepreneurs dissolve that nasty anxiety and ignite their inner confidence to help them bring their unique talents out into the world. And I do this through rapid transformational therapy, which is a Marissa Peer speciality. I do this through coaching and energy work. So this is the Anxiety Compass, and welcome to the Power Hour. I'm super excited because I've been away for a couple of weeks, and tonight we have the lovely Rachel Collins with us. I'm just going to wait, Rachel, to bring you on just for some more people to turn up. Hopefully they will. If not, then we'll just have a conversation, and I'm sure people will catch the replay. So this is your chance to get your questions ready to ask Rachel anything to do with nutrition and lifestyle. You can ask about yourself, and you can ask about friend or whatever. Do get involved. We are bringing this to you for free. We are, we do this full time. We work with clients, but we want to give you value because we believe in uplifting people. So get involved. It makes our jobs a lot easier. And also, I just want to say, grab a notebook as well, because you might want to take some notes. So I'm going to bring Rachel on now. Just bringing Rachel on.
Hello.
There she is. Hello, Rachel. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I am warm.
Good. I know. I'm just going to say, I've got a fan blowing here. I don't know if, can you hear it?
No,
is it noisy?
not at all. Not at all. It's perfect.
Okay, good.
I was going to say the same thing. I've got the window open here and someone outside has got some music going. So if there's some background music, that's why.
Okay, cool, yeah. We'll just have to see how it goes.
Show, like, I am wearing clothes. It's just a strapless dress. I'm not naked.
To be honest, Rachel, you're very beautiful. Like, if you were naked, it would be fine.
Oh God, no. God, can you imagine the anxiety about that? Oh,
yeah, like, I know, totally.
Nightmare come true, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, those horrid dreams that you have. Yeah, right. So I'm going to introduce Rachel. Rachel Collins is a health coach and a lifestyle coach. She's also a really good speaker, and she's a writer. You write blogs, don't you? You write blogs? Yeah. And she is here to share a wealth of information with you tonight about nutrition. And I know Rachel from a night that I put on in Brighton called, what's it called? Inspiring Talks. Yeah. And I was really, Rachel did our very, very first impromptu Risky Biscuit session, and she then got up and did her 10-minute talk, which was called From Lost Woman to Wonder Woman. And I really, really loved the sentiment behind it. I loved the way that she spoke, and I knew deep down inside that she had a lot more wisdom to impart. So that's why I wanted to get her on tonight. So hopefully we'll have a few more people watching live, but if not, I'm sure they'll catch the replay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your anxiety story, Rachel? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your anxiety story?
Okay, so I would never put myself in the category as somebody who has any kind of clinical diagnosis of anxiety or any kind of mood disorder. I've always thought of myself as I'm very lucky. I don't fall in that category. But when I was thinking about this, because I knew you were going to ask me this question, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, what is my experience with anxiety? And if I'm really honest with myself, of course I've experienced it. I think everyone must do. And for me, I've experienced a range of different forms of anxiety as well. you know, I have and still do experience that kind of low level nagging, something constantly there. Yeah, just that low level anxiety a lot. I go through phases of feeling that. I used to feel it an awful lot more, but I still have times of feeling like that. When I was pregnant with my second baby, I got what I would describe as proper anxiety or real anxiety, which manifested as panic attacks. And for me, that was because, you know, it all made total sense in that I'd had a really difficult birth the first time round. So when I was faced with this prospect of having to do it again, I was, you know, the anxiety was driving me crazy. I couldn't sleep at night. I was having flashbacks of what had happened before. And I think what I've experienced about anxiety is that there are so many different root causes. And you know, it could be a trigger. Like for me, you know, I think giving birth the first time gave me some kind of PTSD. You know, they don't call it that, they call it birth trauma, but it's effectively the same thing. So, you know, anxiety can be caused by a particular trigger, a life event, something that's happened, or it can be something else. And it's more the something else that I can talk about a lot tonight, which is the kind of this low level anxiety, the fact that it's always there, it's always this nagging feeling, and it kind of never seems to.
It's like this underlying hum, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, that one is often coming from something else. I mean, it's really difficult for me to say, and I'm sure you've got tons of experience with this, Sally, but you know, that low level anxiety can come from a trigger point, or it could come from a long list of other things that are related to your nutrition, your diet, and your lifestyle. And what I'd like to talk through tonight really is, and I've made like a couple of notes on the key things that I would really love to get across, because I know I can natter, and I'm sure you can, and we could go off on a tangent and miss some of the key things. But the key things that I think would be really helpful for me to share tonight are the foods, the kind of good and bad foods. So the things that are really great to add in, the foods that are really important to take out, and then also the tests that can be really illuminating for you. Because if you fall into the category of knowing what your trigger is, and you know there's a particular thing, an event, or a, you know, childhood trauma or whatever, if you know what your thing is, this is about managing the anxiety as much as you can with your nutrition and your lifestyle. But if you can't figure it out, if you're thinking, I have no reason to feel anxious, like honestly, there is just nothing, and you've looked through all of that and there's no triggers, it could be something else. So I'll talk through what the different tests are that you can actually go and get to figure out if there's actually, the anxiety is just a symptom of something entirely different. So that's things that I thought would be
a really good point to make.
Cool to cover tonight.
No, I think that's a really good point to make, because I think if you are an anxiety sufferer, you've just got to go at it from every angle. I really believe that. And I know for me, I have looked at my own nutrition, and I know when I am eating better, I mean, for about 6 months, a couple of years ago, I was eating perfectly. It was like the perfectest diet. And I literally forgot what anxiety was. So clearly there was something there, you know. I've gone back and I've done the regression and the childhood stuff, and I've looked at that, and obviously, you know, there is still some certain triggers around parent staff and being around other people, so social stuff, which is like a subconscious thing. But I'm a real true believer that you have to look at nutrition if you want to cure anxiety. And for me, in those 6 months, I really felt that it was cured. Because I felt so invincible. I felt so confident. You know, I wasn't even nervous going on stage. And I feel that actually nerves and anxiety are slightly different. You know, you can get a little bit nervous about public speaking, or nervous about a certain event, but anxiety is this just sort of low level thing that is going on all the time. So yeah, I'm glad you said that.
And I think, you know,
hi Rachel, by the way, the other Rachel.
I think everyone's experience is different. And the other thing about what I will be talking about is quite often you'll find, and particularly in conventional medicine as well, if you go and talk to your GP about anxiety, they'll often lump together depression and anxiety. Can you hear me okay? Because I've lost your visual. Your screen is frozen. I don't know if it's my
Oh,
Wi-Fi connection.
I can hear you. I can
Okay.
hear you. Let me just go and check my connection. 1 second.
All right. No, I just don't know if it was me that had gone missing.
Yeah, I'm good.
You're
I've got a
good.
good connection.
Okay.
Let me just.
Hopefully I'm
Oh,
on.
I forgot to check something actually. Keep going.
All right. Okay. So yeah, if you go and talk to your GP about anxiety, or if you are already in the system and you're working with your health professionals on anxiety, quite often they will lump together depression and anxiety, or you might hear it referred to as generalized depression and anxiety. And I will, to a certain extent, be doing that tonight because generally what I talk about is food and mood. And I know that for some people that watch this, the experience of depression and anxiety is really closely connected. And for some people, it'll be completely different. And you might identify with one or the other, but absolutely not both. But either way, whichever kind of camp you fall into, the root cause behind depression and anxiety are very, very similar. There's an awful lot of overlap, so I will talk about both of them if that's okay with everyone here.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
because it's a food and mood thing rather than saying that depression and anxiety are the same thing. I mean, if you go back and you look at kind of all the psychology studies, the psychiatry studies, even just back about 10 years, they were absolutely convinced that you either were depressed or you did have anxiety, and it was a chemical imbalance, and that was the diagnosis. And the newest research that we've got coming out now is that those mood disorders, the depression or the anxiety, those feelings, they're just a symptom of something else that's going on. So the fact that in conventional medicine the two are kind of lumped together, actually, although maybe that isn't your experience and you feel like that's not right, in terms of root cause and imagining these things as just a symptom of something deeper that's going on, it kind of makes sense actually. So yeah, we'll be talking a lot about that tonight.
Yeah. Well, no, it's true. I mean, I know my mood lifts. If I eat, for example, yesterday I ate a plate of pasta. I was around my dad's and I ate a plate of pasta. Literally an hour later, I felt so down in the dumps and just like I was dragging myself around. And I thought, oh, never again. I always say that with pasta, never again. Oh, it just feels so like heavy and I'm so sensitive to food. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I wasn't anxious, but I did actually start feeling like a little bit of palpitation going on. So yeah, food and mood. And
Yeah.
go on.
Now, I was just going to say that a lot of people, it's really easy to dismiss food and say, no, it can't be food, it can't be, because it can be quite hard to tap into that feeling. That there are certain things that we consume that we know instantly that it's made a difference to our mood. So some really great examples are caffeine. We know, or most people know that if they've had a cup of coffee, their mood will change. Some people are hypersensitive to it. They'll get the heart palpitations, they'll get jittery, and then the anxiety will kick in. And you can see that connection quite clearly. Other people feel like they're a bit happier with some caffeine in them and their energy lifts. We can see so clearly that connection between our food or, what we're consuming and our mood. Chocolate, cake and sweet stuff actually has a very similar effect. So there are certain foods that if you ever need that evidence, if you ever need that proof that there is a connection between what we consume, what we eat and what we drink and our mood, then go back to those foods and just test it on yourself, because alcohol is another great one for seeing what a massive impact certain foods and drinks and substances can have on our body. And
they're quite obvious, aren't they?
They're the really obvious ones. So that's, for me, that serves as a reminder of how powerful food and drinks are in our body. Now imagine you wouldn't drink, or some people do, but most people don't drink coffee all day every day because they know that it has a big impact on them. But there will be certain foods that have a more discrete impact on you, but because it's discreet, you don't notice it, and you are eating that food multiple times a day. And that's where you don't realize what a massive impact food is having on your body. But yeah, if you ever start to doubt it, if you ever start to doubt whether or not food is having an impact, go back to those foods that are really, really obvious, like the chocolate, like the caffeine, like the alcohol, and then you'll kind of go, oh yeah, it does. It does have an impact.
Yeah, definitely. So how did you come to nutrition yourself? What happened to you?
I've always been interested in health. I used to work in the NHS. I was not a clinician back then. I was in strategy, project management. And then I had my first baby. Didn't bounce back as well as I would have liked to, as well as I expected to. Couldn't lose the baby weight, and just felt really, really down. I was never diagnosed as having postnatal depression, but I was probably on the edge. And I describe myself like that quite often. I wouldn't have diagnosed myself as someone who had anxiety, but I would have said I was on the edge, and the same with postnatal depression. I didn't officially have it, but I was very, very close, and I just wasn't enjoying motherhood. And I think a lot of mums have been there, but at the time I didn't know that. I didn't know loads of mums had been there. And so I actually ended up becoming quite isolated. I'm an introvert, so I thought, well, I'll just kind of shut down the barriers. I won't try and go out, because going out with a baby is stressful and hard work, and I don't like people anyway, so I'll just put down the barriers. And I became quite isolated. My other half worked long hours at that time out of the house. Family were really far away. Not many of my friends had babies. They were all either at work or they'd kind of done the baby thing years ago. And I wasn't in a good place. I wasn't in a good place emotionally, and I definitely wasn't in a good place physically. I was overweight, I had no energy, and I was drinking a little bit too much every single night. And actually, the turning point for me was when my other half bought me a voucher to see an Ayurvedic practitioner. And I kind of thought, this is brilliant, I'm going to get a massage. And there's no way I would have gone and just booked myself a massage. I clearly needed a little bit of TLC. I needed something for me, but I didn't really at the time believe I was worth it. That's a whole nother issue of self-worth and everything else. But I wouldn't have gone and booked myself a massage. But I thought, this is great. I'm going to go and see an Ayurvedic practitioner, and she's going to prescribe me a massage. That's brilliant. But she didn't. We had a bit of a chat around the birth trauma stuff. And she prescribed some changes in my diet, and it was like really simple stuff. She told me to cut out gluten. She told me no, not gluten. She was quite specific, actually. She said wheat, not gluten. She told me to cut out tomatoes, and one other thing that I can't remember off the top of my head, but she told me to cut out 3 things, and I thought, this sounds just really bizarre. Like, I eat really healthily, and this is a bit odd. Like, seriously, tomatoes? I thought they were healthy. But I quite liked her, so I gave it a go. And when I went back to see her a month later, my energy had shifted so much. I could go to the gym. I could, I was starting to lose the weight, and I just felt so much better. I was more positive. And then I was kind of hooked. I just wanted to know more about this whole nutrition thing. Around the same time, I was actually made redundant from my job in the NHS. They were having massive restructures. Not the nicest thing to go through when you're on maternity leave and having to negotiate a redundancy. But anyway, went through that. So I was looking for a change in career. And just through then, all of this research that was triggered really out of cutting out tomatoes and wheat. Really bizarre. It just triggered me to go and look into nutrition more and see what kind of benefits I could get. And one of the things I came across was an article from somebody who was talking about how just changing what you eat isn't necessarily going to make you healthy and happy. You need to look at how you're spending your day. Because if you're not spending your day in the way that lights you up and makes you feel amazing, then you can never be truly healthy and happy. And that got me. There was something in that message that made me go, Jesus, I've missed, yes, how have I missed that? Like, that sounds so simple, but how did I miss it? How did I miss it? And I looked at the woman that had written the article. I thought, oh, well, what does she do? Oh, she's a health coach. And how do you become one of those? And that's how I found the school that I ended up training at. And I signed up very, very quickly. It was one of those spur of the moment, life-changing decisions. And even just signing up to do that course was life-changing in itself, not because it then gave me a business and a total change of life direction, but it gave me something just for me. It gave me something to focus on, and I had time away from my baby, which actually I really needed. It gave me time to focus on just something for me that I found fascinating and I really, really loved. And that did so many amazing things for my emotional health, my mood. And that, of course, then had an amazing knock-on effect with my physical health and the way I cared for myself. Because when I was happy, and when I'd had an amazing day, I didn't feel the need to go, oh, thank God the baby's in bed, I can open a bottle of wine, So yeah, that's how I became a health coach. And since then, I've been through a few different iterations. I started off working with mums and trying to help mums navigate all of that. And I have now broadened that out to all women, because I am just passionate about helping women with their health. And I've taken my nutrition training a bit further since then as well. And I'm now starting to navigate the world of functional medicine, which is just incredible. It's where nutrition is going next. It just combines all of this stuff together, and is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And depression and anxiety as a topic is supported so much by functional medicine, because as I said, it kind of it treats the depression, those depressive feelings, the anxiety, as a symptom of something else that's going on. And with functional medicine, you can really understand what the root cause is and address those, instead of kind of this tapping, putting on a plaster or trying to just resolve the symptoms, which is what happens when you're being put on antidepressants or something like that. It's or even when you're on those days when you're just like, oh well, I'll just fake it till I make it, I'll just pretend I'm happy. That's putting a plaster on the symptoms. It's not resolving the root cause of the problem.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. No, thanks for that share. It was really amazing, and hopefully it'll inspire other people
an awful
that are watching
lot on
as well. No, it's great. It's really, really good, because what you said about, you've got to look at the whole picture, not just your diet, but how are you living your life, what joy is in your life. Because if you don't have joy in your life, you will reach for the sugar, because sugar in your mind, your body thinks sugar is joy, but it's not at all. It's actually toxic and poisonous. So could you talk a little bit about sugar?
Yeah, let's talk about
Rachel?
sugar. It's on my list of things that you really need to start cutting out. There's a whole range of reasons why sugar is bad. But the reason we go for sugar, as you say, your brain kind of equates it to joy, and it's incredibly addictive. You may have seen, and I know it did the rounds on social media a while back, all the studies that show it lights up the same part of your brain as the other addictive white powders like cocaine. And actually, when rats have been tested in a lab, they would rather go for sugar than cocaine. It is that addictive.
Oh my
and
God.
It gets to the point where we feel like we're reliant on it. We can't be happy without it. It's really difficult to come off sugar. Really, really difficult. But it's totally worth it, because firstly, sugar, in the short term, sugar it does crazy things to your blood. This is how I explain it to my kids. Sugar does crazy things to your blood, and it can make you poorly. This is like how I explain it to a 4-year-old, and why I make them eat their broccoli before they're allowed their pudding. But it does crazy things to your blood. And when you eat lots of sugar, you release insulin to get the sugar out of your bloodstream. But when you're eating lots and lots of sugar, and you suddenly dump a load of sugar into your bloodstream, your body then will release lots and lots of insulin to try and combat that. And what can happen then is that the insulin will get all the sugar out of your bloodstream, but the insulin doesn't leave your blood as quickly. Now what happens then is actually your blood sugar levels go too low. And that, I'm sure we've all experienced some kind of sugar crash in the past. So some people, it manifests as a headache. Some people suddenly feel really faint and think, oh my gosh, I need to eat, and I feel really sleepy. Some people get really jittery, and some people do feel anxiety. you know, that jittery kind of nervy, horrible feeling of anxiety. And that literally just can
angriness
be, it can literally just be a sugar crash that's causing anxiety. And that's just a short-term effect. But the long-term effect of having sugar in your diet has, I mean, there's so many different kinds of health reasons, and I could talk about it forever. But one of the things that sugar adds to is inflammation. As I said, it's very, very addictive. So it can lead to almost this, you know, behaviours that you would probably more associate with somebody that is a smoker or a drug user or an alcoholic, that kind of, oh, you know, where am I going to get my next fix? And that sort of jittery discomfort that you may identify as anxiety, other people will identify as something else, but that kind of searching and hunting for your next fix kind of behaviours, which...
So how can we get it out of our... Sorry, Rachel,
no, that's all right.
Completely interrupting you. I was going to ask you what I mean, we all pretty much know that we shouldn't be eating sugar.
Yeah.
and we know why. Well, not all of us know why, but
the why is complicated.
We get it out of our lives? Yeah, the why is complicated. And I mean, I know from my experience, when I have cut it out completely, anxiety's just been non-existent. And I did not equate sugar to anxiety at all. Yeah. But now I do. Why is that?
Why is it hard to cut out? Or why do you equate the two?
Why? Sorry. Hey, Lisa. Lovely to see you. I'll get you on one of these as well. Right. So why does eating sugar cause anxiety, basically? Apart from the spikes, are there any other reasons?
Loads.
I'm sure there are.
Loads. There's loads.
Give us one or two.
Okay, so as I've said, so anxiety and depression are symptoms of something deeper that's going on. And it can be all different things. It's not necessarily one root cause. And actually, in terms of these mood disorders, we don't have all of the exact answers. So as I said, when I was at uni over a decade ago now, crikey, we were taught that all these mood disorders was an imbalance in the brain, a chemical imbalance in the brain. And that actually was just a theory, and the theory had not been substantiated. They hadn't really proven this theory, but it was the best theory they had at the time. Now we have a whole load of new theories, which I can share with you, but they are still theories. But the thing is, we are getting closer to sort of proving them, because when we're putting things into place, it's actually making a difference. So as you say, you know, you cut sugar out and you feel better. So, you know, our theories are definitely getting closer because they involve sugar. So, I mean, as I said, one of the things that sugar does to us is it affects our blood sugar. And blood sugar imbalances can cause feelings of anxiety for a whole range of reasons. But basically, if your blood sugar goes too low, then your body is going to go into survival mode. It's going to think, I am starving. I have not got access to sustenance. And all of that kind of thing. And, you know, a lot of our body's behaviours are very primal. They're back from caveman days. And we see this when we, you know, when fear is activated, for example, and stress, all of these responses in our body do not serve us particularly well, to be honest, in this day and age. That they really don't, because they are designed for helping us fight with a saber-toothed tiger, for example. So when our blood sugar drops, that's putting our body into a state that's saying, you don't have access to food, you're not safe. And if your body is telling you you're not safe, what's going to happen? You know, you're going to react to that in one way or another. Now, some people may react to that with anxiety. Other, you know, the responses to fear that we have are fight, flight, or freeze. Now, fight and flight are probably more connected with anxiety than the freeze response. The freeze response is the thing that just makes you sort of shut down and dissociate with the world around you. So that might sort of manifest as social withdrawal, or just actually just going to sleep. So, you know, personally, I don't get the anxiety if I have a big plate of pasta, but if I have a big plate of pasta at lunchtime, I want a nap all afternoon.
I think that's actually what causes the anxiety, the feeling of tiredness, but actually having to be socially active with people when in fact I feel knackered and I just want to go to sleep. Yeah, it's that sort of, oh my God, I've got to perform, you know?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there's so many knock-on effects of it.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to ask you was, how can we cut the damn thing out successfully?
Big
Of
question.
because it's such a drug.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
I'm actually going to move into my kitchen. So keep talking, but it might cut off because
All
I
righty.
think the connection issue is my issue. So
Uh,
just bear with me,
all
but keep
righty.
talking.
So I can talk about sugar. Well, as with any drug, you've got two choices. You can go cold turkey or you can wind it down slowly. If it was something like nicotine, and I used to work in the NHS in respiratory services, so stop smoking services were something, a service I worked very closely with. Now with nicotine, they advise you set a quit date and you just quit, because even if you got it down to like one cigarette a day, that nicotine and that kind of craving, that addiction is still in your body. Sugar is not like nicotine. Sugar comes in many forms, and we do need some form of sugar in our body. Now, we are all slightly different. There will be certain people that absolutely thrive from going zero sugar. Zero sugar. And they are the hardcore ketogenic diet types, the paleos, the ones that literally just live on eggs and spinach and nothing else, and I do know a few people that really, really thrive on that. A friend of mine she does very, very well living that way, but she's a very unique case. She's actually had thyroid cancer, and absolutely credits having zero sugar in her diet to the fact that she's managed to survive that. And we're all very different now, and we're different at different points in our lives as well. So you look at children, if you cannot cut carbohydrate and sugars out of a child's diet. They need energy. They have a need for more explosive energy than a sedate adult does. But an adult that's running marathons has a different sugar requirement to somebody who sits at a computer all day with their 9 to 5. So we're all slightly different. The key thing I would say to most people is look at the type of sugar you're consuming. So fruits, let's not start by cutting out fruit. Fruit has so many amazing nutrients in it, and so much amazing fiber in it. There's some fabulous things in fruit, but it's been demonized. Fruit sugars, the only type of fruit I say avoid is one that has been juiced, pasteurized, put in a carton and sat on a shelf in a supermarket for God knows how long before you've drunk it. Because that kind of juice, there is nothing good left in there. All the good stuff, all the live enzymes, all the amazing stuff has been killed off. It's been heat treated, and it's basically sugary water. And it's kind of, come on, if you're going to enjoy something sugary, it might as well be really amazing rather than stuff from concentrated in a carton off the supermarket shelf. So
go for a cream cake
instead.
God,
just have a cream cake and enjoy it rather than having orange juice with your breakfast every morning.
That's what I say.
So look at the type of sugars that you're consuming. Fruit sugars, not actually that bad in the grand scheme of things. The types of sugars you really want to start with are the processed sugars. So, if you're having spoonfuls of sugar in tea, if you're consuming like Coca-Cola every single day, if you're having lots of chocolate bar, like regular chocolate bars, we're all consuming sugar in different ways. Start to focus on that first. Don't think, oh God, I can't have rice because it's carbohydrate. Like that can be really, really difficult. We're all starting
bit silly as well. Because actually brown rice has got some nutritional value as well.
Yeah, and again, we are all different. So when I did my health coach training, we were taught about something called bio-individuality, basically saying we're all different.
I've heard about this. Keep talking. I'm just going to shut the window.
It's difficult doing lives in the summer, isn't it? You have to sit and bake in an enclosed office.
Connection versus. Right, go on. I'm back.
But yes, so I would suggest to everybody just look at what you're eating to start with, even if awareness is really, really powerful. So just start. If you're thinking, oh my God, I know I eat way too much sugar, I've got to do something about this, I don't know where to start. start just by keeping track. Just keep a diary for 3 days of what you're eating and bring your awareness to the food. Because sometimes even just by doing that, you go, oh my God, I've already eaten 6 of these Kit Kats today. Maybe I shouldn't have another one. And those changes might just start to happen naturally. If they don't, you know, don't worry. We can get that sorted. But then the next thing to do would be think, what is it that you can do that's going to make the biggest impact? So if you know that you are having 5 cups of tea a day and you're putting 3 sugars in each of those cups of tea, you know, that could be a really good place that you can, you know, even if you just cut back on 1 cup of tea, you've saved yourself 3 teaspoons of sugar every single day. That is massive. So choose to just make that one tiny step. Just choosing to make that one tiny step and change one habit can make a huge difference in the long term, and celebrate that and be proud of the fact you can make that one tiny step. And then once you've got that bedded in, it might take, you know, you might do it for a day and go, well, that was easy, hang on, I can cut out 2 of these cups of tea with 3 sugars. That's 6 teaspoons I'm saving a day. You know, maybe you can do that within a day. Maybe it's going to take you a week to get to the point where you feel you can drop another one. Maybe it's going to take you 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We can all do it in our own time scales. You know, don't be hard on yourself. Just keep moving forward.
That's the key, isn't it? And do you think that eating? Oh, wanted to ask you actually, because I've heard that there's 2 schools of thought. Should you eat little and often, or should you eat 3 meals a day and fast in between meals? Which one is better for your blood sugar? You know the answer to that.
Well, I think the difficult thing is everyone has a different opinion. I've got quite a strong opinion on it. But I've looked into the research on this an awful lot, and I think there is an awful lot of merit in not having lots of little meals and not grazing constantly through the day. Not just because of the impact it has on your blood sugar. When you fast overnight, and actually I personally do fast for quite a long time, and I used to be a believer of, you know, breakfast is the most important meal of the day and you have to break your fast in the morning and you have to start your day well. But actually, for me, knowing that I've had a good long period of fasting is much more healthy. So we're all slightly different. We do all respond differently to this. But when you eat, the first few hours are focused on digesting. The next few hours are focused on kind of utilizing the fuel that you put into your body. And then normally by then, most of us are already eaten again. And that's not optimal for our digestive system. If we're eating the correct foods, we don't need to continually eat for our blood sugar. Again, this is slightly different for different people. So, you know, this would be a different story if you were pregnant. Just as an example, it would be a different story if you were working out very intensely an awful lot of the time. You know, we're bio-individuality, we're all slightly different. So this is very generalized. But if you're constantly eating, you don't ever give your digestive system a break. And that can lead me into a whole new topic of gut health is really, really important. Actually, gut health is a really important part of mood.
Let's talk about gut health. Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about
when
that,
you
actually.
fast, you allow, how can I simplify this? So when you're fasting, your body is pushing and all your food is in transit. And what happens is you kind of have this first wave of your food going through transit, and then you have like a cleansing wave of stuff going through your digestive system. And that's things like bile and your digestive enzymes and all of the bacteria that support and promote digestion. Now, if you're constantly eating, there isn't that cleansing wave, and that can cause all sorts of problems in the gut. So like leaky gut, SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is basically the right bacteria growing in the wrong place. But 90% of us is not actually us, it's our bacteria. And our bacteria have a massive impact on our mood because there's a huge number of serotonin receptors in our gut. They're not all in our brain. Huge amount of serotonin in our gut. So this is why gut health is really, yes, there is a massive connection between the gut and the brain. So it's really, really important to support your gut health. Which actually brings me on to the other key thing that I ask people to start cutting out of their diet. So the first thing I ask people to cut out is sugar. And not necessarily all of it at once, but, you know, as I said, tiny steps, tiny little steps. Start with, you know, one thing that you can handle, and you know, praise yourself, be really positive about it. And then the next thing to cut out is gluten. Now, this isn't because I'm jumping on board the gluten-free fad and the gluten-free train, but this is because, particularly if you have a mood disorder or mood is a problem for you, the gut is really, really important. And gluten can be a major irritant to the gut lining. And if you've got problems with your gut lining, you need to give it all the support it can get for healing. And removing gluten is one of the quickest and easiest ways you can support healing in your gut lining. Now, there's tons of other stuff.
It's quite easy, isn't it?
Pardon?
I think it's quite easy nowadays to cut out gluten.
It is.
With all the pastas and you can buy.
So one of the things I would say, the kind of caveat around gluten, is try not to replace normal wheat products with highly processed gluten-free wheat products.
Yeah, so, no, absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah, it is very easy to go gluten-free these days, because you can go to the shops and just buy gluten-free bread and gluten-free cakes and basically a whole load of gluten-free junk food. But yeah, that brings on a whole load of other problems, so it's just not worth going down there.
Yeah.
But there are lots of things that are naturally gluten-free. So if you want pasta, brown rice pasta, it's great.
Yeah, brown rice pasta, things like that. Yeah. I think there's just been a couple of comments actually. Teresa said she's addicted to red rice at the moment. Red rice is great, I would have thought, because it's got a bit more nutritional value than white rice.
Yeah.
And Lisa has said it's all about finding out what works for you. Yeah. And it does take time to get it right. Best to cut out processed food to start with. Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, definitely. Processed foods and processed foods have so much stuff in them that we don't realise, and quite often the actual process of making those foods is quite scary. Really good example of that actually is decaf tea. The amount of chemicals they have to put through the tea to take the caffeine out is just awful. You're better off just having caffeinated tea. Like it's just
have normal tea. Yeah.
So, that's a fascinating one. I watched a documentary on it once. But yeah, absolutely. And then yes, in terms of rice, the worst kind of rice you can have is white rice, because it's had all of the fibre taken away from it. And you're just, you know, it's a simple carbohydrate. You're going to get this sugar hit really quickly. With other rice, it is definitely a case of trial and error and working out what works for you. Some people absolutely thrive on like the high carb, low fat way of eating. So very plant-based with lots of whole grains. So like the brown rice and the different coloured rices, right? What's the plural of rice? I don't know.
Rices will do.
But then other people really do not thrive on that. They prefer a low carb, high fat, higher protein way of eating. And at the moment, we haven't quite, unless you have a particular problem that you're working to solve, there isn't a set answer to what is the best way of eating. The answer to what is the best way of eating is whole foods. Mostly plants. And you know, so whole foods as in whole grain rice is definitely better than white rice. Whether or not it's amazing is down to the individual. So yeah, play around with it. And one of the things that I would say in terms of figuring out exactly which foods are amazing for you and which ones are not great for you is keeping a food diary. So not just writing down what you've eaten, but writing down how you feel. And you know, how you feel physically, how you feel emotionally. So when you can do this, I mean, I get all of my clients to do this, and it's something that I do with I've got an online program which is based on the elimination diet, and with that, what I get people to do is to keep a food diary through the whole process, and you write down how you feel immediately after you've had the meal, and then you write down how you feel about an hour later. And then just keep an eye on how you feel through the rest of the day, and keep note if, say, you don't sleep particularly well that night, because you can start to spot patterns in what's working for you and what isn't. So yeah, that's the red rice one. We were on something else before we got
interesting.
Before we got
gut health, gluten.
Gut health and gluten, that's it. Crikey, I could just talk forever on this stuff, and this is why I had to write myself some notes, so I got through the main point.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, a big part of it.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things I want to do.
Yeah.
Go on, keep talking.
No, yes, so there's the big message around what to cut out is about knowing yourself and really learning to tune into your body and listen to what's working and what's not. And as I said, quite often just the awareness of what you're eating and how you're feeling can be incredibly powerful. So a food diary is a really, really good starting point. Cutting out gluten will really help support your gut lining, and gut health is a really big part of your mood. There's so many details around that, I'll probably bore people, but that is the most important thing. Focus on whole foods. Don't go for the overly processed gluten-free stuff. Choose stuff that's naturally gluten-free. Rice is naturally gluten-free. So yeah, that's kind of the starting point with that.
Okay.
Would it be helpful for me to talk about what foods to add in? Because I think quite often
I was going to ask you about supplements, and I was going to ask you if there are any particular supplements that you would advise for anxiety sufferers, or for mood, should we say mood boosting, and any particular mood boosting foods?
Okay. So actually, so before we go on to that, I'm going to mention the tests, the things that are really, really good to find out, because when it comes to supplements, I don't like to recommend an isolated nutrient or mineral or anything like that unless I know you're deficient in it. And I'm a test, don't guess kind of girl. This is really, really important because actually what we can see from studies and from research is that if you isolate a nutrient, even if it's a good one, vitamin A is a really good example of this, and retinol and a few different things can really make you quite poorly if you supplement when you are not deficient, or you supplement in isolation, because all of these nutrients work together. So I don't like choosing a single supplement to add in unless we know you're deficient. Now there are a couple of things that are kind of fall outside of that, and I'll come on to those in a minute. So there are 5 tests that I will always encourage people to get when they're struggling with their mood, and particularly anxiety and depression. The first one is to have your thyroid checked, because if your thyroid isn't working properly, if you're either hypo or hyperthyroid, it can have an impact on your mood. So it's really, really important to get that checked. Now, when you go to the GP in the UK, most of the time they will just check your TSH levels, which are your thyroid stimulating hormone levels. And if that's within the normal range, they'll send you on your way and tell you your thyroid is fine. From a functional medicine perspective, I would also be pushing for you to get your T3 and your T4 levels checked. Now, these are other thyroid hormones. It can be really, really complicated, but it's really important to have the full picture when it comes to thyroid. So definitely get your thyroid checked, because when that's not working properly, that can have a big impact on your mood and a whole load of other things as well. So that's the first thing to get checked. The second thing to get checked is your B12 levels. So if you're not absorbing B12, or maybe you are vegetarian or vegan and you're not getting many animal products, and you're low in vitamin B12, that can bring on anxiety, depression, or other mood disorders. So it may be that you don't have depression, you don't have anxiety, you haven't got any of these problems, you're just low in B12. And you can literally just add in a B complex supplement, or you can go, if you're extremely low, the NHS will give you B12 injections, and you could instantly be cured. It'd be amazing. So it's definitely worth getting that one tested. The other thing to get tested is your fasting glucose levels, and a range of blood sugar tests, because as we've talked about before, there is this connection with sugar. And if you're not managing your blood sugars very well, whether that's because you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, or just because because there's something else going on, that can be inducing anxiety. So it's definitely worth getting those checked, and that would need to be your fasting blood sugars, because it's about how your body's handling your sugar levels in the absence of food. That's the third thing to get tested. The fourth one is your vitamin D levels. Low vitamin D is associated with mood problems, with depression and anxiety. The problem with getting vitamin D tested is that most GPs will say you're probably low in vitamin D, so we're not going to bother testing. I've had clients come back to me time and time again when I've said, I think it's important that we get your D levels tested, and they'll say, no, my GP just says I probably am deficient, and I should add in a supplement. And the vitamin D is one of the supplements that I will say most people should be adding into their diets, particularly those of us, in the UK. I know it's lovely at the moment, but we don't get anywhere near enough sun, particularly in the winter. And quite a lot of people, a lot of people get kind of seasonal affective disorder, and actually their mood really struggles in the winter. It's actually just a vitamin D deficiency. So vitamin D is a really good one to add in.
Yeah, I added it in last year actually, and I did feel that it lifted my mood pretty much straight away.
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth it, yeah.
And I think, this
winter.
assumption that pretty much all of us are deficient in vitamin D is probably accurate. So yeah, add in vitamin D. And also there's so many other amazing benefits of having more vitamin D. There's, in terms of things like a lot of cancers have been connected with D deficiency. And also it really boosts your immune system, so you're much less likely to get the flu and colds and all of that kind of stuff. So vitamin D, yeah, that's one of the few things you're allowed to add in isolation. Other vitamins, I don't like you to do it.
Brilliant.
So yeah, vitamin D is a good one to add in. And then the fifth thing that is really good to get tested is the levels of inflammation in your body. So what you need to test for that is CRP, or C-reactive proteins. And that will tell you about the levels of inflammation in your body. Because the other big theory that there is around anxiety and depression at the moment is they call it the cytokine theory. Cytokines are another indicator of inflammation in the body. But the theory is that chronic inflammation is actually the cause of these symptoms of low mood or changes in your mood, whether that's something like bipolar or generalized anxiety and depression. So yeah, so they're the 5 things that are really good to get tested. So you were asking about supplements. The supplements that I would say to add in as a result of that. So if you've had your thyroid tested and everything is absolutely clear and normal and fine, double check the B12. Supplement with B12 if you're low. Supplement with B12 if you're low. That will support your energy and loads of other things as well. And a lot of us are low in B12. Definitely, if you're vegetarian or vegan, you may find actually it's not even worth getting tested. Just go and get some B12, because we don't really get it anywhere else. Actually, the microorganisms in your gut can produce B12, but they have to be really, really healthy, and you have to have an amazing gut health for that to happen. So yeah, it's good to supplement with B12 if you're vegan or vegetarian, and if you're low for another reason. If I said... So yeah, vitamin D, I've said that one. B12 is a really good supplement. The other supplement that can be helpful is an omega supplement, because omegas are essential fatty acids, are really important for our mood and the stability of our mood. The key one really is omega-3. Now this can be difficult to get without going to a fish oil. Fish oils are so mixed in terms of what to get when you buy omegas. You can buy cheap fish oils, but the likelihood is they're highly toxic with all a load of other things, and that's going to give you other problems. We're going to be looking at mercury poisoning and all of that kind of stuff. Krill oil is amazing, but we have a bit of a sustainability issue there. It's basically the lower down the food chain that the fish is, the safer it is in terms of harmful toxins from that's within the fish. And krill is right at the bottom of the food chain. But if we keep on harvesting it for our fish oils, then we're leaving nothing for the fish to eat. So there's a bit of a sustainability issue there. I know that's not on the topic of anxiety, but maybe sustainability gives you anxiety.
Yeah, there are some people on here that
Yeah.
do suffer with anxiety because of the world issues. So yeah,
It's kind of, for
it
me,
can be.
this is our emotion and our mood and everything is holistic. If we know that we're out there doing good in the world, that's going to give us a lift, even if there's other stuff going
Of
on
course,
that's crap.
we are
But
part of nature
yeah,
at the end of the
we're
day.
all part of the same thing. So yeah, if the best way to consume or to get omega-3 without consuming sort of the toxic fish at the top of the food chain and without stealing all of the food at the bottom of the food chain is to go for the source, which is algae. And there's plenty of that out in the oceans, and it's a plant-based source. So if any vegans who are not happy about having a fish oil, a plant-based omega is available, but it's quite hard to get hold of. Yes, so an algae-based omega-3 would be really, really helpful as well. So they're the supplements. The other supplement that I would suggest to most people that could possibly help. There's still research going on into this to get more specific, but given that we know gut health is part of the problem around mood disorders, a probiotic could potentially really help. So there are lots of different ones out there. You can go down the path of having stool tests to see exactly what your microbial makeup is. So if you're that way inclined, you can go down that route. But otherwise, a really good general probiotic from someone like Optibac or BioCult could be enough to help. And yeah, a lot of people could be supported just with a probiotic. So there are
Is it worth?
Sorry?
Is it worth taking supplements if you don't cut out gluten and sugar?
That's a good question. Yes. Yeah, it is, because everything you do is supporting, the way I describe it is most of this stuff is dose dependent. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. A little less gluten and a small probiotic is just, it might just be enough to tip the balance in your favor. It might just be enough to help you through whatever it is you're going through right at this moment in time. And actually taking a more relaxed approach to your nutrition can be, and usually is, far more helpful than becoming obsessive over it. There's actually a name for becoming really obsessed with what you eat and becoming kind of anxious about, or scouring food menus to make sure there isn't gluten in the dish that you're choosing, and that's known as orthorexia. And actually people in the health coach community will kind of giggle and laugh at ourselves and go, oh, I know I'm being a bit orthorexic. Because we know that we can get really picky with what we eat, but we shouldn't really, because it is a condition, and it's kind of up there with anorexia. It's becoming so obsessive with what you eat, and this food obsession, whether it's an obsessively not eating, or whether it's obsessively only eating things that adhere to a very strict regimen, it's not healthy and it's not safe, and that's not great for our mental well-being. Actually, what I would rather encourage people to do is just focus on these baby steps and know that you have a guiding principle of less sugar, fewer processed foods, less of a reliance on gluten-based foods. So, less of a reliance of having toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, and pizza or pasta for dinner. That is a big reliance on gluten foods. So just have a principle of reducing those down, not becoming obsessive, stressing yourself out if you have them once.
I suppose awareness is the key, really, with that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you say, the food diary gives you the awareness, and then once you've got the awareness, you're much better equipped to make better decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about the 80-20 rule? Is that sort of a good guiding principle?
I love the 80-20 rule, and yeah, that works really, really well for me. It works well for most people because it's doable. It's manageable. And so for anyone listening that doesn't know about the 80-20 rule, it's about staying kind of on plan within the guidelines for 80% of the time, and 20% of the time saying, do you know what, I'm out, it's fine, just whatever. If I were being strict, I would push it more to a 90-10. kind of rule.
Okay.
But it
I
really
suppose if
depends.
you're battling with an illness.
Exactly. It depends on where you are.
Mm,
If you are generally feeling quite good, but just want to maintain good health, 80/20 is where it's
mhm,
at. If you are really
mm,
struggling at the moment, and whether that is with, weight, diabetes, anxiety, if you've got an issue that you need to address, go that little bit
mm.
stricter just to start with, because
Yeah.
that does help kick habits. It helps create new good
Mm,
habits. So yeah, work
yeah.
towards a 90/10 rule until
Mm,
you're in a good place, and you were just talking about maintenance rather than kind of
mm.
supporting your body to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah, I've got a watch on today. Oh yeah, there we go. I've got a clock up there.
It's 8:30, so we've been chatting for
Yeah.
an hour, and I think
How did
I
that happen?
know
Oh my gosh.
it just goes really quickly. You're
Yeah.
really in the zone there, Rachel. It's fantastic watching
God.
you. And I'm just seeing if there's anything
Mm.
else. Oh, just quickly before you go,
Yep.
what do you think about meat?
Meat.
Because when I eat a steak, I feel amazing. And I hate that about myself because I love cows. I love
Yeah.
them so much, but they taste so good.
Yeah.
And I
No.
also, I just feel incredible after eating a steak.
Could be the B12. Could be
Could
the
be.
B12.
But also the
Um,
levels of protein, I find the protein really grounding and I
yeah.
get very clear-headed.
And that's
Not so much
so,
after fish or chicken,
yeah,
but
that is so good that you have recognised that. So meat has had a bit of
mm,
a bad rap over the last few years,
mm,
and I have certainly changed my opinions on meat more recently.
mm,
I've been watching the
mm,
research come out around, this whole battle around saturated fats, and a little while
mm,
ago we had all the headlines saying that bacon was as bad as smoking and all of this kind of stuff.
mm,
But what we know now is that saturated fats, and dietary cholesterol and that kind of thing are not linked to heart disease in the way that we thought they were. What we
right.
do, so that suddenly kind of takes away that really bad thing about eating steak.
Mm,
The thing with processed meats like bacon,
mm,
yes, they're not as healthy, they're not that great, but the headline was with bacon, um, a slice of bacon or eating bacon would increase your risk of cancer by 20%. So,
okay.
and that's scary. But the reality of that
Mm,
was that it was a test done on prostate cancer. And men have a 5% risk of getting prostate cancer anyway. If you
mm.
had 4 rashers of bacon every single day of your life, your risk of getting prostate cancer would increase to 6%. So, right.
Okay.
It's my husband calling me.
Yeah.
So that's actually officially, it is a 20% increase on risk. So 5% up to
Yeah.
6% is a 20%
Yeah.
increase in risk. But it's nowhere near as scary as the headlines made it out to
Yeah.
be. And that's if you're having 4 rashers
Yeah.
of bacon every single day. Who does that?
I just think staying away from the papers is a really,
Papers are
really, really
scary.
good idea.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and as I'm watching all of this research unfold, that the fact that the links with saturated fat is not as bad as we thought it was, and that
Mm,
actually the polyunsaturated fats, the vegetable fats, the good ones, the ones that are
mhm,
supposed to be good, maybe aren't as good as we thought they were,
mm,
has started
mm,
to change my thinking around meat. And
mm.
actually, the thing with meat, my guidance on meat is choose good quality meat. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be organic. Organic is great,
Mm.
but the most important thing when choosing meat is choose meat that's been well fed. Nutrition
Right.
makes such a big difference to the
Mm.
nutrients within the meat that you're eating. And
Right.
omegas are a really good example of this. So, a cow that has eaten grass as it's supposed to eat, it's been pastured and it's been out grazing on grass, it will have a really good balance of omega-6s and omega-3s. It's meant to be 1 to 1,
Mm.
so that ratio of 1 to 1, omega-6 to omega-3. A cow that's been fed a diet of corn and grains and things that cows are not supposed to eat, and they've
Mm.
basically been factory farmed, their
Mm.
ratios of omegas are 20 to 1 in terms of omega-6 to omega-3. Now, those are supposed to
Right.
be equal. but it makes that ratio go to 20 to 1, and that's where
Very imbalanced.
that is where our meat becomes unhealthy. And the same goes for
Right.
chickens. So you want chickens that are allowed to wander around and forage for their food, because chickens are meant to be omnivores. They're meant to eat grubs and worms. Most of our chickens that we're buying, that are the cheap chickens from the supermarkets, they're being fed grain and nothing else.
Right.
Chickens are not vegetarian. They're not supposed to be vegetarian. So the nutrition
Right.
within our meat that's factory farmed is not great. But the nutrition in meat otherwise, the way it's supposed to be, the meat that our grandparents would have eaten, and our grandparents, is actually really nutritious. There's so many amazing minerals in there that will help with your mood. There's omegas in there that will help with your mood. There's B12 in there that will help with your mood. And there's good proteins which will feed and fuel your body, which will help with your mood. So, sorry, vegans and vegetarians, I feel awful for saying it, but actually
I know
I'm
it's
doing
an awful battle
now.
It's an awful battle to have. I mean, I've been vegan, I've been vegetarian, I've lived with a carnivore, and you know, I have sort of a bit more of a balanced approach now. And I do enjoy a good fillet steak. It does make me feel good, and there's no denying it. And I don't like that fact, but it, you know, it is what it is. And I suppose we just have to consult our own inner wisdom and guidance for that, I think.
And I think the nice thing for me from that kind of perspective is that if you're choosing really good quality meat that's been raised well, it means that the meat has been treated well. You know, the most nutritious meat is that comes from the animals that have had a really good life, that have been able to live like animals are supposed to live. So, you know, chickens that are factory farmed are not going to be nutritious anyway, so don't buy them, don't eat them.
No.
But the chickens that have been allowed to roam free and live a life, they're the ones that are going to be good for you. So by eating less meat, but choosing to, you know, pay for the expensive meat that has taken time to rear, hasn't been pumped full of growth hormones and rushed off the market, but actually has lived a good life, pay your money for that. And what you're going to be doing then is starting to change the industry. You're going to be, you know, having an impact on a wider scale on farming and farming practices as well. So you're kind of putting your money where your mouth is in more ways than one.
I agree.
By doing that.
You have to buy the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly.
So anyway, Rachel, we're going to wrap up there, but I just want to say a huge thank you for spending your Monday night with us. And thank you to the amazing people that have been watching: Katie, Teresa, Lisa, who else has been watching? Rachel, Grimley and Faith. And to any of you that are catching the replay, do ask questions, and I'm sure Rachel will answer them after the event. Absolutely. And Rachel, if anyone wants to contact you and work with you, perhaps they've got some issues themselves, they want sorting out, how can they do that?
Okay, so the first step, I do offer coaching programs, but the very first step that we go through is to have an initial consultation. And in that initial consultation, I will go through your health history in detail. And the purpose of it really is to start to figure out these interconnections between your symptoms, your nutrition, and your lifestyle. So it's kind of playing detective, really, in that first session. I don't have any spaces open over the summer for those initial consultations. I have a few clients that I'm keeping going through the summer, but I am focusing on my kids until they go to school in September. But as of September, I'm going to be opening up. I might be able to open a few up at the end of August, spaces for initial consultations. So if you are interested in an initial consultation, then do drop me a line, rachel@rachelcollins.co.uk, and we can get you scheduled in for as soon as I open up some spaces at the end of August.
Good. And I hope people take you up on that, because I really, really think that addressing your nutrition is such a valuable way of curing anxiety. I mean, like I say, for me, those 6 months when my diet was perfect, just the word anxiety did not even come into my mind. So, all right. I think we'll finish there.
Lovely talk, Sally.
Yeah, you too. Have a lovely evening.
You
Take
too,
care.
my lovely.
Speak soon.
Speak to you